Which of the following best describes why a company might maintain both a primary supplier and one or more backup secondary suppliers for a critical raw material? A. To reduce supply chain risk while still capturing most of the relationship and cost benefits of concentrating volume with the primary supplier. B. To guarantee that both suppliers always charge identical prices. C. Because a single supplier is legally prohibited for any critical material. D. Because backup suppliers eliminate the need for any safety stock. The correct answer is to reduce supply chain risk while still capturing most of the relationship and cost benefits of concentrating volume with the primary supplier. Maintaining a primary supplier alongside qualified backups balances the cost and relationship benefits of concentrating volume with a primary source against the risk mitigation benefit of having a proven alternative available if the primary supplier fails. Which of the following best describes managing material routing during schedule implementation? A. Overseeing the sequence of work centers a job moves through, including batch sizing and alternate routing decisions. B. Managing only the financial cost of materials with no relationship to physical routing. C. Managing only where raw materials are purchased from with no relationship to production. D. A task performed only once during initial product design and never revisited. The correct answer is overseeing the sequence of work centers a job moves through, including batch sizing and alternate routing decisions. Managing material routing during schedule implementation involves actively overseeing the sequence of work centers a job passes through, including decisions like batch sizing process versus transfer batches and whether to use an alternate routing when needed. Which of the following would be the best indicator that an organization's SOP process is immature? A. Plans are frequently created in functional silos with limited cross-functional agreement before execution. B. Executives regularly attend and make decisions at the SOP meeting. C. Sales, operations, and finance consistently use the same reconciled numbers. D. The process has a clearly defined, repeatable monthly cycle. The correct answer is plans are frequently created in functional silos with limited cross-functional agreement before execution. A hallmark of an immature SOP process is functional silos creating disconnected plans with little cross-functional collaboration, in contrast to a mature process with shared numbers and executive engagement. Which of the following is the best description of a planning time fence in master scheduling? A. The point beyond which the system can automatically change the master schedule with less restriction. B. The point within which no changes to the master schedule are ever permitted under any circumstances. C. The total lead time to build the final assembly schedule. D. The reorder point for a purchased raw material. The correct answer is the point beyond which the system can automatically change the master schedule with less restriction. Beyond the planning time fence, the master schedule is more fluid and can be changed more freely, often automatically by the system, while changes inside it typically require more scrutiny or manual authorization. Which of the following inventory control policies would typically be most appropriate for items under ABC classification? A. Tight control with frequent review, accurate records, and close monitoring. B. Loose control with infrequent review and minimal record keeping. C. No inventory control policy at all. D. Control identical to that applied to C items. The correct answer is tight control with frequent review, accurate records, and close monitoring. Because items represent the largest share of inventory value despite being relatively few in number, they warrant the tightest control, most frequent review, and most accurate record keeping among the ABC categories. Which of the following would be the most appropriate use of a distribution or warehouse requirement as an independent demand source? A. Replenishing a regional distribution center's stock ahead of anticipated customer orders. B. Calculating raw material requirements from a bill of material. C. Determining a subassembly's dependent demand. D. Setting an item's low-level code and MRP. The correct answer is replenishing a regional distribution center's stock ahead of anticipated customer orders. Distribution or warehouse requirements represent independent demand generated to replenish stocking locations ahead of anticipated customer orders, separate from directly forecasted end customer demand. Which of the following best distinguishes SOP from budgeting? A. SOP is a recurring, volume-based operational planning process, while budgeting is typically an annual financial planning process. B. SOP and budgeting are identical processes with different names. C. Budgeting occurs monthly while SOP occurs only once every 5 years. D. SOP has no connection to financial outcomes at all. The correct answer is SOP is a recurring, volume-based operational planning process, while budgeting is typically an annual financial planning process. SOP is a rolling, typically monthly, volume-based planning process, while budgeting is usually an annual financial exercise. The two should be reconciled but are distinct processes with different cadences and units of measure. Which of the following would be the best rationale for a firm to pursue dual sourcing rather than sole sourcing for a critical component? A. It balances the benefits of a close primary relationship with the risk mitigation of a qualified backup supplier. B. Dual sourcing always guarantees the lowest possible total cost. C. Dual sourcing eliminates the need for any supplier performance monitoring. D. Dual sourcing is required for every purchased item regardless of criticality. The correct answer is it balances the benefits of a close primary relationship with the risk mitigation of a qualified backup supplier. Dual sourcing maintains a primary supplier relationship often for the bulk of volume while keeping a second, qualified supplier available, balancing the relationship depth of single sourcing with the risk mitigation benefit of having a backup. Which of the following best describes why labor schedules must be coordinated with a detailed production schedule, rather than being planned entirely independently? A. Production cannot proceed without the right number of appropriately skilled workers available at the right time, so labor and production schedules must align. B. Labor schedules have no relationship to whether production can actually be executed. C. Labor scheduling should always be finalized before any production schedule is even considered. D. Production schedules are always feasible regardless of labor availability. The correct answer is production cannot proceed without the right number of appropriately skilled workers available at the right time, so labor and production schedules must align. Since production requires the right number of appropriately skilled workers to be present at the right time, labor schedules must be coordinated with the detailed production schedule. A mismatch between the two would make the production plan infeasible. Which of the following would be the most effective way to validate a new quantitative forecasting model before fully adopting it? A. Backtest the model against historical data and compare its error metrics to the current method. B. Adopt the new model immediately without any testing. C. Ask a single executive whether they like the new model. D. Use the new model only for products with no historical data. The correct answer is backtest the model against historical data and compare its error metrics to the current method. Backtesting a new forecasting model against known historical data and comparing its error metrics such as MAD or MAPE to the current method is the standard way to validate whether it will improve accuracy before full adoption. Which of Porter's generic competitive strategies focuses on achieving the lowest cost structure in the industry? A. Differentiation. B. Cost leadership. C. Focus. D. Niche. The correct answer is cost leadership. Cost leadership is the generic strategy centered on achieving the lowest cost structure in the industry, allowing the firm to compete on price. Which of the following best describes why improvements in technology might be cited as a goal when establishing a deeper supplier relationship? A. Collaborating closely with a supplier can provide access to new capabilities, equipment, or processes that benefit both parties. B. Technology improvements are never a realistic goal of supplier relationships. C. Only the buyer can ever benefit technologically from a supplier relationship. D. Technology improvement goals apply only to transactional relationships. The correct answer is, collaborating closely with a supplier can provide access to new capabilities, equipment, or processes that benefit both parties. A deeper supplier relationship, such as a partnership, can provide access to new technology, equipment, or processes that benefit both the buyer and the supplier, which is why technology improvement is often cited as a relationship goal. Which of the following would be classified as a qualitative supplier performance measure rather than a quantitative one? A. The supplier's workforce diversity and labor practices. B. The supplier's on-time delivery percentage. C. The supplier's unit price. D. The supplier's defect rate in parts per million. The correct answer is the supplier's workforce diversity and labor practices. Workforce diversity and labor practices are qualitative, socially oriented supplier performance considerations, while delivery percentage, price, and defect rate are quantitative, directly measurable metrics. Which of the following best describes the fundamental difference between a reorder point (ROP) system and material requirements planning (MRP) for replenishing inventory? A. ROP assumes relatively continuous, independent demand, while MRP time phases dependent demand derived from the master schedule. B. ROP and MRP are identical techniques used interchangeably for all types of demand. C. MRP can only be used for independent demand items, never dependent demand. D. ROP requires a bill of material while MRP does not. The correct answer is ROP assumes relatively continuous, independent demand, while MRP time phases dependent demand derived from the master schedule. A reorder point system is best suited to relatively continuous, independent demand items, while MRP explicitly time phases dependent demand calculated from the master schedule and bill of material, better handling lumpy, derived demand patterns. Which of the following best describes why demonstrated capacity data should be periodically updated rather than used indefinitely from a single historical measurement? A. Actual resource performance can change over time due to equipment aging, process improvements, or workforce changes, so outdated data can misrepresent current capability. B. Demonstrated capacity never changes once initially measured. C. Updating demonstrated capacity data has no effect on scheduling accuracy. D. Demonstrated capacity is relevant only during a facility's very first year of operation. The correct answer is actual resource performance can change over time due to equipment aging, process improvements, or workforce changes, so outdated data can misrepresent current capability. Because actual resource performance can shift over time due to equipment aging, process improvements, workforce changes, or other factors, demonstrated capacity data should be periodically refreshed to ensure scheduling decisions reflect current, accurate capability. Which of the following best explains why maintaining accurate on-hand balances is critical to a valid MRP netting calculation? A. Inaccurate on-hand balances directly distort the net requirement calculation, causing over- or underordering. B. On-hand balances have no bearing on MRP netting logic. C. MRP only uses on-hand balances for financial reporting, not planning. D. On-hand balance accuracy matters only for finished goods, never for components. The correct answer is inaccurate on-hand balances directly distort the net requirement calculation, causing over- or underordering. MRP nets gross requirements against on-hand inventory and scheduled receipts to determine net requirements. If on-hand balances are inaccurate, the resulting net requirement and therefore planned orders will also be wrong, leading to over- or underordering. When a gap exists between the aggregate demand plan and the aggregate supply plan, what should the SOP process do first? A. Immediately hire a large number of additional workers. B. Systematically evaluate options such as overtime, outsourcing, and demand shaping. C. Reduce the sales forecast to match current capacity. D. Cancel all marketing promotions. The correct answer is systematically evaluate options such as overtime, outsourcing, and demand shaping. SOP systematically evaluates multiple options for closing a demand-supply gap, such as overtime, outsourcing, and demand shaping, rather than taking an extreme single action. Which time series component cannot be predicted or explained by trend, seasonality, or cyclicality and represents unexplained variation? A. Random irregular variation. B. Level. C. Bias. D. Tracking signal. The correct answer is random irregular variation. Random or irregular variation is the residual component of demand that cannot be explained by trend, seasonal, or cyclical patterns and is treated as noise in the forecasting model. Which of the following would be an appropriate output from the executive SOP meeting? A. A finalized, approved aggregate demand and supply plan with resolved trade-off decisions. B. A new employee handbook. C. A revised corporate logo. D. A detailed daily dispatch list for the shop floor. The correct answer is a finalized, approved aggregate demand and supply plan with resolved trade-off decisions. The executive SOP meeting concludes with leadership approving the aggregate plan and making final decisions on any trade-offs that could not be resolved at lower levels. An engineering change to a product's design is being introduced. Which concept determines the specific point at which the new design replaces the old one in production or field use? A. Effectivity date plan. B. Time bucket. C. Tracking signal. D. Demand filter. The correct answer is effectivity date plan. An effectivity plan or effectivity date specifies exactly when an engineering change takes effect. For example, the serial number or date after which the new revision replaces the old one. Which of the following would most likely reduce forecast error caused by promotional demand spikes? A. Explicitly modeling promotional lift separately from the baseline forecast. B. Ignoring all promotions in the forecasting process. C. Using only a simple moving average with no promotional adjustment. D. Removing promotional periods from historical data without any substitute estimate. The correct answer is explicitly modeling promotional lift separately from the baseline forecast. Explicitly modeling the expected lift from a promotion separately from the underlying baseline forecast produces a more accurate total forecast than either ignoring promotions or blending them into the baseline without adjustment. Which of the following best describes the trade-off inherent in setting a higher customer service level fill rate target for an item? A. Higher service levels generally require more safety stock and higher carrying cost. B. Higher service levels always reduce total inventory investment. C. Service level targets have no relationship to inventory investment. D. Service level and safety stock move independently with no correlation. The correct answer is higher service levels generally require more safety stock and higher carrying cost. Because service level and safety stock are directly related, targeting a higher fill rate generally requires holding more safety stock, which increases carrying cost. The classic service versus cost inventory trade-off. Which of the following statements about forecast error metrics is correct? A. MAD measures the average magnitude of error, while bias or MFE measures the average direction of error. B. MAD and bias always produce the same numeric result. C. Bias can never be negative. D. MAP cannot be used when comparing items with different volumes. The correct answer is MAD measures the average magnitude of error, while bias or MFE measures the average direction of error. MAD averages the absolute value of errors capturing magnitude regardless of direction, while bias MFE averages the signed errors capturing whether the forecast tends to run high or low. In a DRP record, a replenishment order at a regional distribution center becomes a component of which higher-level plan? A. The gross requirements at the supplying source location. B. The master production schedule of the customer. C. The regional center's own safety stock policy only. D. The reverse logistics plan. The correct answer is the gross requirements at the supplying source location. A planned order release at a downstream distribution center becomes a gross requirement at the upstream supplying location, linking the DRP records across echelons of the network. Which of the following best describes why a company might choose domestic sourcing over foreign sourcing despite a higher unit price? A. Shorter and more predictable lead times, easier communication, and reduced supply chain risk exposure. B. Domestic sourcing is always cheaper than foreign sourcing in every case. C. Domestic sourcing eliminates the need for any supplier evaluation. D. Domestic sourcing is required by international law for all industries. The correct answer is shorter and more predictable lead times, easier communication, and reduce supply chain risk exposure. Domestic sourcing often offers shorter, more predictable lead times, easier communication time zone, language, culture, and reduced exposure to certain international supply chain risks, which can offset a higher unit price. Which of the following best describes why prioritization rules are needed when managing the size of queues at a work center? A. They determine which specific job should be worked next when multiple jobs are waiting in the queue simultaneously. B. Prioritization rules are used only to calculate a resource's theoretical capacity. C. Prioritization rules eliminate the need for any queue at all. D. Prioritization rules apply only to purchased materials, never to jobs at a work center. The correct answer is they determine which specific job should be worked next when multiple jobs are waiting in the queue simultaneously. When multiple jobs are waiting in a work center's queue at the same time, a prioritization rule such as earliest due date or critical ratio determines which job should actually be worked next, guiding the dispatch decision. Which of the following best describes why recycled material inputs can introduce additional scheduling complexity compared to standard virgin raw materials? A. Recycled material supply and quality can be less consistent, requiring more flexible planning and potential quality checks before use. B. Recycled material always has identical, guaranteed quality to virgin raw material. C. Recycled material introduces no additional scheduling considerations whatsoever. D. Recycled material can only ever be used in service industries, never manufacturing. The correct answer is recycled material supply and quality can be less consistent, requiring more flexible planning and potential quality checks before use. Recycled material inputs can have less predictable availability and more variable quality than virgin raw materials, requiring more flexible scheduling and potentially additional quality verification steps before the material can be used in production. Which of the following best describes why a company would track excess and obsolete inventory as a distinct financial reporting category? A. It highlights inventory at risk of write-off, prompting management attention and potential reserve accounting treatment. B. Excess and obsolete inventory is always identical in value to active, sellable inventory. C. Tracking this category has no impact on financial statements or decision-making. D. Excess and obsolete inventory is relevant only to raw materials, never finished goods. The correct answer is, it highlights inventory at risk of write-off, prompting management attention and potential reserve accounting treatment. Separately tracking excess and obsolete inventory highlights stock at risk of write-off, prompting management attention to disposition options and often requiring a financial reserve to reflect its reduced realizable value. A job shop process is best characterized by a. Small batches of varied products routed through general-purpose equipment in flexible sequences. B. A single, fixed sequence used for every product with no variation. C. Extremely high volume and minimal product variety. D. A stationary product with resources brought to it. The correct answer is small batches of varied products routed through general-purpose equipment in flexible sequences. A job shop handles small batches of varied products using flexible, general-purpose equipment, with routings that differ from job to job depending on the specific requirements of each order. Which of the following best describes value stream mapping as a lean and process improvement tool? A. Visually mapping all the steps, material flows, and information flows required to deliver a product or service, identifying value-added and non-value-added activities. B. A financial statement showing a company's cash flow. C. A chart used only to calculate a supplier's on-time delivery rate. D. A method used only for calculating an item's economic order quantity. The correct answer is visually mapping all the steps, material flows, and information flows required to deliver a product or service, identifying value-added and non-value-added activities. Value stream mapping visually documents every step, material flow, and information flow required to deliver a product or service, explicitly distinguishing value-added from non-value-added activities to target improvement efforts. How many did you get right? Let us know in the comments, and tell us what topics you want us to cover next. Want to practice more? Download the app and get hundreds of free practice questions with detailed explanations.